Hi, my name is Jacin, and I'm here to share my experience of family abuse and how I died in this world when I was only 11 months old. When I was 11 months old, my mother and father had left me in the care of my mother's brother one evening. For the weekend, because they were leaving to go away for the weekend and they couldn't accommodate me as well with them. Actually, I suppose my mother and father were quite relieved to let me go for a weekend, as it is a very tough process for parents to take care of a 11-month-old baby. My uncle, which is my mother's brother, lived and stayed on a farm-like area. It was a wooden home, and there was a ground road, and there was a field just across from the home. So the one evening my parents dropped me off at my mother's brother's home, and she put me into his arms, and I remember it feeling very hard and tight, cold, and I started crying immediately because I could feel that it wasn't a presence of comfort and safety and protection, because an 11-month-old baby is not able to protect themselves against anything or anyone. We are literally entirely at the mercy and in the hands of those who had taken responsibility to take care of us in this world. And I cried, and my mother turned around and walked into the car and drove off. My uncle took me in, and there was already a little crib ready, and he put me inside, and there were 6 or 7 other people there as well, other men, and they were playing poker games. There was alcohol, and they were drinking, and the music was playing, and I calmed down the moment I was placed inside my crib, because it was soft, and I again felt safe, protected, comforted. And my uncle returned to the table with his friends, where they were all drinking and playing poker games, and then he took out a white powder, obviously cocaine, and they started sniffing cocaine on the table, all of them spreading it around, sniffing it up into their noses, which is the most absurd action imaginable, because from my perspective, if cocaine was supposed to be within and as your human physical body, it would have been there already. And as they were taking the cocaine, I could feel the whole room becoming dark and heavy, and all of the men started moving like this, like transforming, as they were sniffing the cocaine and drinking the alcohol and playing poker games, and they became louder and louder and louder. And it was like a moment all of them started meshing together into one being, this awful looking monstrous manifestation. And I became afraid, because that's what my eyes were seeing, and I just started crying hysterically, like really loud, hard, completely out of control. And my uncle stood up after a while, because I just cried and I cried and I cried, and he got up, and I remember him doing that, sniffing, and he was stumbling quite a bit to me, and when I was looking up in his face was completely distorted, and it was completely meshed up, and his teeth were big and huge, and his eyes were moving, and his whole body just became like this huge, big, monstrous creature. It was horrible. And he took me, and he picked me up like this at arm's length, and he picked me up and he walked me outside, and he just dropped me. He just dropped me. And it was so painful, because I could feel my body going into all sorts of different directions. Firstly, my top legs broke because he dropped me straight down. My knees broke, cracked, and then he took me by my feet and he dropped me again, and I just cried and I just cried, and I went completely insane with crying, because it was so painful, and because he and all the other guys were completely gone, missing, nowhere to be found within themselves, as the drugs had completely taken over them entirely. They wanted to try and make me stop crying, so what they did was to throw me on the ground over and over and over again until I stopped. And I did eventually. They'd first take me by my ankles, throw me on my head, take me by my arms, throw me down like that, but from high. Just drop me, and just drop me, and just drop me, and it continued for quite a while, until I fell on my neck strangely, where my whole neck and my back bent like that. And then I was in the interdimensional existence, and I realized that I was dead, and what had happened to me. And it was the most painful experience in this world imaginable for me, an 11-month-old baby, being literally tortured and abused by being thrown onto the ground repeatedly by men who were supposed to take care of me, completely gone on drugs, not knowing and understanding what they're doing. I'll continue in my next interview.